Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. We've got some NBA rule changes to talk about today and some players they could really change the value of. And first and foremost, though, we really appreciate all the support we've received, all the positive comments that we've gotten recently about this new channel. Really appreciate all of you. So please make sure, guys, that you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office channel as we continue to grow this. Joining me, as always, is Keith Smith. Keith, how are you doing, man? I can't wait to get into some of these rules. There's some of the things I've been asking for what feels like forever, and finally the NBA is going to do it.
Yeah, definitely. It's we heard rumor of this a month ago maybe,
Mm-hmm.
that they were going to start looking at some different things. It sounds like rule changes, point of emphasis, changing how they actually call it. We're going to find more out about those details here, but a lot of these things are to clean up stuff. I think that aggravates a lot of fans. Things where
Mm-hmm.
you hear a lot of that's not really basketball. They're not really trying to do anything but draw a foul or anything like that. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how this comes down, and this is maybe a way to help the defense a little bit,
Yeah.
where the game seems to have taken on more of an offensive lean over the last, let's call it 2-3 years.
Well, and that's a really important note, Keith, because the NBA has been pushing offense more and more and more to the point where this season I felt like just trying to defend was very difficult. Right, it was hard for a
Hmm.
defender to have any kind of right to space or anything like that, and I think it had gone a little bit too far. So seeing the NBA do something to try to beef up the defense a little bit, or at least give them a little bit of support, I think that's important here. But here's what the rules are. Okay, according to Shams Charania of the Athletic, the NBA's competition committee is going to train officials to identify and adjudicate the following actions. Okay, when initiating contact with defenders. Number one, when a shooter launches or leans into a defender at an abnormal angle. Okay, so we're talking about not a natural shooting motion. We've seen a lot of that where guys pump fake somebody on a 3-point attempt and then jump to the side and twist and contort and able to create contact. When a shooter kicks his leg up or to the side at an abnormal angle, which that one's pretty obvious. And number three, might as well just call this one the Trae Young provision. When an offensive player abruptly veers off his path, sideways or backwards, into a defender. So, what
That
are you,
last one too,
yeah,
we could call that the Chris Paul when
that's
dribbling,
also a Chris
because
Paul
he's
dribbling.
like the master of that. Yeah, and he's been the master of that for what's he in year 16, 17,
Yes.
whatever it is. Like it's been every year he's been in the league, he's been good at that one.
Get in front of random big man X and
Yep.
fall down. That's been the Chris Paul move for forever now. And these are, like you said, these are an irritant to fans who are watching the game. Because look,
Yeah.
one of the great things about basketball is it's very easy to put up a hoop in your front yard, grab a ball, and go out and play. Right? Not every sport is like that. Not every sport you can go out there, grab a ball, and just go play. If you want to go play baseball, you got to round up a bunch of friends. Basketball, you can go work on stuff in the driveway. You can play one-on-one, right? You can still get work in. A lot of people have access to basketball, but you go play in a pickup game somewhere and you never see this kind of stuff happening. And so seeing it
Yeah.
take place on the NBA floor is irritating for fans to watch, right? It also slows down the game, and it's just felt like you're trying to deceive the officials. I keep going back to I don't like seeing a player make a play where the success or failure of said play is dependent on whether or not the whistle blows, not whether or not they actually put the ball in the basket or execute what they're trying to do. It's completely dependent upon the whistle. And so I like this from the NBA, but how do you actually officiate this? That's what I'm curious about. Are these offensive fouls? Are these no calls? How are the officials going to handle these situations? And can they be consistent with it? I think it's great they've got these things, but how they go from here in terms of actually policing this is going to be so important.
Yeah, and I think some of these definitely you could call as offensive fouls
Mm-hmm.
if you want, right? The pump fake and a defender makes a great closeout, leaves his feet, but goes almost straight up and down, and the offensive player with no chance of making the shot just throws themselves into them. That to me, that's as much of an offensive foul as it is a no call. because you're throwing your body into them. It's the same thing with driving with
Yeah.
no intention of scoring the ball. Just putting your head down, I'm going to run right through the guy in front of me. That's an offensive foul. So you're just trying to go through the player. The leg kick thing, that one, I'm very curious to see how they do it. There are some guys who shoot with kind of an exaggerated leg kick.
Yeah.
It's less than it used to be. We used to have, right. I mean, you were talking about playing in the driveway. We all used to kind of emulate those weird, funky shots like in horse and
Yeah.
stuff, and those things and in that. But those are less so than normal. But you can tell when it happens. So when the guy's doing the splits in midair, it's like
Yeah.
that's not how he really shoots. And it's invariably the fans of that player or that team will yell at you and say, that's how he always shoots. And it's like, this is not the first game I've ever watched. Like, come on,
Right.
get out of here with this. And then the jumping in the air backwards thing, that one's just nonsense. Because unless you're really shooting like a fall away jump shot, nobody teaches you to shoot that way. So yeah, so that one, my guess is what we're gonna see probably initially is those just become no calls.
Hmm.
But if like let's do the leg kicking out one. If you start taking defenders out with that and things like that, then that's probably going to start turning into that should be an offensive foul. Because if you're taking down the defender, now the other thing is right. If you're doing that leg kick thing, you take him out, that guy can't get a run out, he can't get out on the
Right.
break or whatever it is. So yeah, so those are the ones. Whatever they can do to kind of clean it up, make it a little easier on the officials, I'm there for. I I'll call out officials when it's nonsense
Right.
stuff. Like unfortunately we see all too
Happens.
often.
Yeah.
But the game's already hard to officiate. Take some of this stuff out of the mix, and that makes it a lot easier to officiate. And you know what? The best players, the Trae Youngs, the James Harden, the Chris Pauls, the guys who take part in a lot of this stuff, Joel Embiid for a big man, those guys, they're good enough that they're going to figure out another way. Their game is not wholly dependent on these things. It's just something else they've done. And to this point, I don't really blame them. I never complain about James Harden going foul hunting because it works. It gets him, 10, 11 free throw attempts a game. So I don't have any problem with it. If it works and they're going to keep doing it, then by all means, you should continue to do it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I did want to discuss that a little bit. Does this impact the value of some of these players? I mean, instantly, the guys you mentioned them, Trae Young, James Harden, Chris Paul. I mean, look, last season, during the regular season, Trae Young was fourth in the NBA in free throw attempts with 8.7 per game, and he shoots at an 89% clip. That's a lot of points. If the NBA changes the way they are officiating these, when he jumps backwards, when he veers to the side, those aren't fouls anymore. Does that impact his effectiveness to the point where he isn't quite as valuable on the floor? Or are there ways around it to where, okay, he stops doing that, but he's going to find something else? And the same with James Harden. Even Joel Embiid is a guy who likes to embellish contact quite a bit.
Yeah, I think they find another way, right? It's either they don't do that or they find another way. It's like when Michael Jordan was at the peak of his powers,
Mhm.
and I remember there was all these rules changing. People forget there was an illegal offense rule in the NBA for a while because Jordan got so good one on one that what teams were doing is, and you couldn't play any form of zone defense back then. So what teams were doing was they were putting all four of their offensive players on the other half of the court. And if you went straight down the foul line, with an imaginary line, they were putting four guys on that side of the court, and Jordan was unguardable. So what they put in was an illegal offense rule, which said two players needed to be on the same side at all times. And you know what? Did it change things for Jordan? Yeah, slightly for probably about a week or two, and
Mhm.
then he was fine. And then he got back to being the guy he was. These guys will figure it out. They're good enough that they're going to figure it out. And no, and again, I just go back to if you can make it easier on the officials, the game in the end will be a lot more enjoyable. Because the other thing is, nobody wants to go to a game or put a game on
No.
TV and watch a free throw shooting contest. It's not what you want to see. Now, again, I'm not putting any criticism on James Harden gets probably the most of this, right? Of this guy just all he does is go hunting fouls. Well, that's the best way for him to score points and win games. It's there. But you know what? James Harden is good enough that he doesn't need to do that. He'll figure out another way to make plays without, them calling some of this embellished stuff.
Well, and I think, I mean, on one hand, fans will always have something to complain about, right? If this is gone, if they really do follow through and clean up this stuff, there's going to be something else, right? There's going to be something else where players taking advantage of things, and something else is going to be there to complain about. But overall, I think if this works the way that the NBA is laying it out here, and if they're able to, and again, the implementation of this is so important, and the consistency is so important here. If they can do that, I think it's going to raise the appreciation of some of these players' games, right? Like right now, if you walk into a room of NBA fans and you say Trae Young, you're going to get a lot of negative comments coming your way, a lot of negative reactions because of the way he's perceived, because of the way he goes after fouls. And same thing with James Harden, same thing with a number of other players. If you can get rid of those things, doesn't that just leave more room to appreciate the skill of their game? I think that could be a positive here.
Yeah, I'm with you, and that's a great point because it's going to be a huge thing for people to be able to watch these guys and say, "Wow, that guy is really, really good," and be into it. The other thing is, let's make sure everybody knows this is for next year. So when you're
Yes.
watching the conference finals in the next few days here, and Trae Young does one of these moves, don't scream and yell, "I thought you were changing that." This is all for next season. So this will be re-education for the officials over the off
Mhm.
season, and my guess is you'll start seeing some of this put into play in summer league for those of younger officials there, and then the other guys it'll be focus in training camp. And like anytime they do a point of emphasis or a rule change, this will be called really, really tight in the first few months of the
Yes.
season. And then the players will adjust, the referees will give a little bit more slack, and then it won't be the big deal. But what you'll see probably in late October, November, maybe even all the way up to Christmas, you'll see a guy like Trae Young, do one of his Trae Young moves, doesn't get a call, and he's yelling at the referee. I think the Hawks will be on TV a lot more next
Yeah.
year because of this run. So we'll all see it a lot more on the national level, and everybody will get all up in arms about oh man, they did this and that, and then right around the turn of the calendar year, he'll adjust. The officials will give a little bit more leeway on it, and no one will even think about it. And this won't even be a story by the time we're to the holiday, just past the holiday season.
Well, that would certainly be great if it's able to be implemented consistently, and then yeah, hopefully that'll just the game will shift, everybody will adjust, and we can get rid of some of this ugliness that we've been seeing on a game by game basis. But all right, everybody, give us your thoughts in the comments down below about these rule changes. Is this a positive adjustment for the NBA, and do you think they're going to be able to successfully implement these things and on a consistent basis? Also, don't forget, subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.